The voices are within us all to create. It's a phrase that has driven my passion for teaching as I encourage others to find their creative voices. Of course, it comes from the truth that since the earliest beginnings of humankind, we've been making things. In a book I've been reading, the author opened my eyes to a complementary concept: the recognition of beauty as one of the most significant events in the evolution of human consciousness. The idea that seeing something beautiful, a flower, a sunset, a smile, innately awakens feelings of joy and love. So it's no coincidence that the ancient mandala designs that we talked about last week reflect the radiating symmetry of a flower. The focus of my videos so far has been on the making, relaxing into drawing, finding focus, flow, peace, balance, and harmony. This video will focus not only on the making, but the looking. I'll talk about ways you can look at, or more specifically, reflect on your drawings as you consider composition. To compose is to arrange parts or ingredients, to make a whole. And whether it's a musical composition, a written composition, or even a recipe, the creator wants the whole to sound, read, or taste right. As for creating visual compositions, I would say to my middle schoolers that attention to composing your image is to make it read well and look right. And while beauty is in the eye of the beholder, there are some basic rules or truths that we can keep in mind. The oldest of those rules, going back to around 300 BC, is the golden ratio. The golden ratio is a mathematical ratio that exists between two quantities if their ratio is equal to the ratio of their sum to the larger quantity of the two. In other words, when a line is divided into two parts and the longer part A divided by the smaller part B is equal to the sum of A plus B divided by A, this means the line is reflecting the golden ratio, which is equal to 1.618. Now that's a lot of words, and I'm more of a right brain thinker. Math is not my strong suit, but I can appreciate where we can find the use of this formula. We find it in faces and figures, sculptures, architecture, paintings, nature. Contemporary artists and designers use it. For more info on the golden ratio, you can always go and do your own research. What I'll be sharing next is some of the teaching tools that I would use in my classroom to teach composition to my students. Let's talk about the principles of design. These will differ depending on the teacher, the school, book, or website. I decided on these basics partly so that I could turn them into an acronym so that my students could remember them more easily. Cube Vamp: contrast, unity, balance, emphasis, variety, movement, and pattern. Contrast is the striking difference between elements, like colors or textures or shapes. Unity is the look of all parts coming together to create a cohesive whole. Balance is the way elements of the composition are weighted equally. Emphasis is the part of the art that the viewer's eye is drawn to, also called the focal point or the area of emphasis. Variety could be in sizes of elements, the colors, the textures, or variety in shape. Alignment can be considered a principle of design, but not one that I intentionally taught. Movement is the way the viewer's eye moves through the picture, and pattern is repeating elements. Rhythm is one that didn't fit for me as a teacher because I view it as very related to movement and pattern and unity. I've used this visual tool in the past regarding dynamic composition. One of the most impactful things you can do for your composition is to use the rule of thirds. Dividing your image space into thirds vertically and horizontally, where the lines intersect, these are the sweet spots. It takes the main subject off center for visual interest. Balance, one of the principles of design. Here, I used the rule of thirds, and then I balanced it out by just including another element. Positioning some elements in a way that leads the viewer's eye to the area of emphasis can be beneficial. Cropping can help reduce negative space. I used to say to my students, unless there's a reason for lots of negative or empty space around your main subject, don't let your main subject drown in negative or empty space. Repetition is pattern. Repeating elements can create unity or rhythm. Then lastly, for whatever reason, odd numbers can be more visually pleasing. This is also a good example of variety: small, medium, and large. When considering the feeling you want to convey in your composition, there are some general truths about the way composed elements can affect mood and meaning. Horizontal lines and shapes, for example, can create a feeling of calm. Diagonal lines and shapes, more active. Take some time with these layout examples, if you want to ponder and perhaps guide you in planning your composition. Here's a possible art starter for you to practice using the principles of design and the other general guidelines I shared. First, choose a symbol to be the main subject. That'll be the emphasis or the focal point. Decide on the intended mood. You'll begin by drawing the symbol where it seems right. I'm taking into consideration that rule of thirds. And my subject is this very simplified fiddlehead fern, which I'll add to in a minute. You'll be adding other elements next to create your composition, and you'll use some or all of the principles of design. You might consider using that list, the Cube Vamp list, as a checklist. Using this as a checklist, I can already check off emphasis. I have my main subject, which will be my focal point. For contrast, I think I'll throw in some straight lines to contrast the curving. I'm breaking up the space here. For movement, I'm going to move my viewer's eye through the picture with some calming, relaxing horizontal lines, and I'm repeating those so I can check pattern off my list. It seems heavy on this side, so I'm going to balance it out. Do that by drawing some clouds. And I can use variety here by creating some small, medium, and large clouds. So I have variety. I've balanced things out. I will create some contrast by drawing some shapes that I've not used before, different than any of the others. And I would continue by adding the details to finish my piece, which I won't do right now. Instead, I will say, I hope that this video about composing your image might be useful, but I would also add that it's really important to rely on your intuition. Do what feels right, what looks good to you. You're the artist. And with that, all you artists, I wish you happy drawing, happy composing, and peace. I'll see you next time.